heart rate zones, lactate threshold, tempo runs, bonking. Running is full of jargon and terms that are not at all clear for newcomers to the hobby. So I'm going to be breaking down some terms that I struggled with at the start of my running journey. So grab a coffee, we go and do some learning. Starting with the hottest topic in running, heart rate zones, and more specifically zone 2 running. Now in short, heart rate zones are increasing percentage bands of your maximum heart rate, or more commonly your lactate threshold level. More to come on that later. Typically broken down into 5 zones, with zone 1 being the lightest, easiest level of work, and zone 5 being the type of work where you're left gasping for breath and questioning why you ever started the workout.
Maximum effort.
For sure, training in heart rate zones and knowing your heart rate zones definitely isn't essential, but it can massively help improve your training if you choose to implement it. For example, zone 2, the aerobic base building zone, is where the vast majority of my training and the training of most runners is performed at, and is easily associated with a pace that allows you to talk in full sentences, or conversational pace. So it's definitely not essential to know what your zone 2 heart rates are if you can still talk in full sentences, but then you're the person talking to themselves on a run, which I have to do whenever I film videos out on the trails. Now there are a few methods to calculate your heart rate zones: maximum heart rate reserve, lactate threshold, there's that term again. You can usually get these from fitness trackers, but you can also get them from online calculators. I'll link a few down below, and we will seamlessly move into lactate threshold. By definition, your lactate threshold is the point at which your body produces more lactic acid than it can clear from your system. Now, I won't go into the biological mechanisms of how you produce and clear lactic acid. People a lot smarter than me will do a lot better job at doing that. But in short, lactic acid is the chemical that builds up in your blood when you undergo particularly strenuous and hard exercise that makes you feel tired and fatigued. Now, you may be asking,
why is knowing this useful for running?
Well, knowing the heart rate in which you reach your lactate threshold will allow you to calculate your heart rate zones and get an accurate assessment as to what your zone 2 heart rate zone is, which is, as we mentioned before, the zone in which you'll be making up most of your running miles.
Yeah, that's all well and good, but how do I determine what my lactate threshold is?
Well, I'm really glad you asked that, because the best way to determine your lactate threshold is in a lab. Yeah, not exactly feasible for us average runners, but you can do it at home. Now, after a thorough warm-up, and I mean thorough warm-up, you will perform a 30-minute running test. Now, I'll warn you, this 30-minute test is designed to be hard. You will go all out for 30 minutes. So all out that after those 30 minutes are done, you can't imagine or can't even think about running ever again. It's the hardest run you've ever done. That's how hard I want you to go out. And what you'll do is, after the first 10 minutes of the run, you'll make a note of your heart rate. And then after the run, you'll take your average heart rate from that 10-minute mark all the way through to the end of the run. You'll need something to track your heart rate, so an Apple Watch, a Coros, a Garmin, something like that, in which your heart rate is accurately recorded. Then once you've got your average heart rate from those 20 minutes, you plug it into an online calculator and it'll spit out your heart rate zones based off of your lactate threshold. This then allows you to target your zone 2 and train efficiently. Now, linking into your threshold heart rate is tempo runs, also called threshold runs, or under the banner of intervals. Tempo runs are generally shorter efforts at a high intensity when your heart rate is at, or at least close to, your lactate threshold. Now, most training blocks will include 1, maybe 2 tempo runs or speed sessions per week, and including these in your training plan is a really good way to balance and round out the aerobic fitness that you'll gain from the majority of your running at zone 2. Now, a few examples of these. Number 1, fartleks, where you intersperse small periods of high intensity efforts throughout a longer run. For example, 3 30-second periods of work, followed by 2 90-second periods, followed by 1 120-second period, all with a 30-second rest in between. Additionally, you get what I typically refer to as intervals, which are kind of more rigid or defined periods of work, and generally a little bit longer. So my intervals will include maybe 4 minutes at higher efforts or 8 minutes at higher efforts. I like to include fartleks and interval training in my training plan and do one each week. Now, the last term that I really struggled with when I first started running was taper, What is a taper? Well, a taper is the last 10 days, 2 weeks, maybe even 3 weeks of your training block leading up to race day, in which you gradually reduce your mileage from peak week,
The week where you do the most miles during your training block.
by maybe 20 to 30%. And this allows your body to recover whilst utilizing and maintaining all of that fitness that you've worked really hard to build up over the last few months. Now, during this period, you wouldn't be seeing any significant gains in your fitness anyway. All of that work has been done previously. What you're wanting to do is making sure that you're giving your body plenty of time to recover whilst you're still maintaining the fitness that you've worked so hard to achieve. All training plans will include a taper, but it's important to note they're not one size fits all. If you're in this hobby for the long haul, maybe try experimenting with different taper lengths. See what works best for you, but it's probably best not to have a taper any less than 10 days. So these are some of the phrases that caught me out when I first started running, but there are so many more. In fact, I think it's time for a lightning round. Personal best or personal record of the quickest that you have ran a set distance at. Did not finish. Race day may not have been your day and you just could not get the run done. Usually every 4th week of a training block, an intentionally built-in week where you reduce your mileage maybe to about 70 or 80% of the mileage that you hit the previous week, just allows your body to recover a little bit before you increase your mileage in the weeks following. Not what you think it is, sadly. LSD is your long, slow distance or your long, slow run, the cornerstone of many training plans, and fairly self-explanatory if we're being honest. Common phrase for long distance running and the preferred method to run a race. A negative split is when you run the last half of a race faster than the first half. This is preferred to a positive split, where you would try to bank time in the first half of the race, which rarely ever works. Negative splits allow you to conserve your energy and push hard, leaving nothing on the table for the last few miles. You know it when you hit a mental or physical block that you just can't get past, which leads us on nicely to... Yeah, you didn't think I was going to leave this one out, did you? Bonking is when you just hit the wall and you physically cannot keep going. Like, you just can't keep going. So that's some terms and phrases that we use in the running world. Hopefully you found this video educational and you learned a thing or two. If you think that I missed anything out, please drop a comment in the comments box down below. And on your way there, make sure to hit the like and subscribe button. It helps a brother out. Anyway, thank you so much for sticking around to the end of the video. Hope you have a great day and keep running.
Corre pra ver a cor do mar.